We only have a few weeks left in our summer sermon series of songs of faith and songs of our faith to share, and we've saved one of the best for near the last, both the song and Ben, of course. I know. So this is a special treat for us as we look at the different ways that we can connect and the way the tapestries of our lives are formed together by our Creator. Let's hear from Binder.
This is completely unrelated, but there's one thing I've always wanted to do, and I wanted to take a selfie before I preach. Since this is my last Sunday as your youth director, I think I can get away with some weird stuff. So everybody get ready to smile real big. Dan's gonna go sneak in there. Kids, I need you to get in this picture real quick, okay? Go by Dan, because you gotta be in my picture. Okay. Yep. Okay, everybody up in the balcony look really pretty. Everybody down here, you're a lost cause, it's okay. Everybody smile, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thanks, that's all. Oh, thank you. But I don't know about you, but I love songs that tell stories. And particularly, I'm actually, when it comes to listening to music, I'm more of a vibes guy and a little bit less of a lyrics guy. Dan knows because we spend almost every week sharing music in the office, and all my songs the lyrics might be way off base, but the vibes are incredible. So when I find a song that tells a story, and it tells it in a way that clicks in my head, it means something special to me. And the song that we're singing this week, Come Thou Fount, I didn't realize it told a story until very, very recently. And so we're singing that this week, not only because it tells a story, but also this is one of the songs that we sang a handful of times throughout ASP. And so hopefully it reminds us of the mountains in Kentucky. Hopefully it reminds us of these massive circles of kids and adults alike who have taken a week off to be there. But also, I hope that we can pick up on the story that's told in it that I've missed for a long time. And really, I think I can describe the story by the 3 lines. I think the first line around Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing is all about a reception of some sort of gift. The fountain's pouring on us, or the fountain's pouring on the author. Line number 2, or stanza number 2, takes us in a slight switch where it's not just come, it's here I raise my Ebenezer. Ebenezer is one of those weird church words that we say a lot and don't always explain. Literally, it just means stone of help. Practically, it means I built this pile of stones to attest to the fact that God met me here. God helped me here. God did something in my life here. And there's a couple of moments, particularly in the Old Testament, where the Israelites raise a cairn or raise a stack of stones to say God met us here. So first we're receiving grace, then we are remembering grace. We are stamping a remembrance. But then the third verse, and this is the part that clicked to me recently, it's not just a continuation of those two. The third stanza, I think, is a response. There's all this language in it about binding, about sticking, about moving. So we've received, we've remembered, and now we're responding, and we're doing so in a way that joins us to the work of that fount. Spoiler alert, fountains, the water in it doesn't stay static. It doesn't always stay the same. It splashes all over the place. It flows down like a river. And if we are binding our heart to that fount, it's going to take us places we may never have expected to be. So I invite you, as we're going to be singing this song, to reflect on the words and what story they might be sharing, and also how it might possibly connect to our passage in Ephesians that Finney read for us.
fixed upon it, mount of God's unchanging love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I've come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God, he to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let that grace now like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for thy courts above.
If it's okay, we're going to start at the end. We're near the end of our passage. Paul says this phrase that I think is the crux of our passage and is really what I want us to meditate on. And we're going to get into the other stuff, but it's all serving this. Live in love or walk in love as Christ loved us. Live in love as Christ loved us. If you have a chance, this is always the encouragement that a pastor gets to give, read Ephesians sometime. Particularly, read the verses that lead up to this moment in Ephesians, because Paul does this thing where he kind of just builds and builds and builds and builds and then drops something, and this is one of those somethings where everything mattered, but everything really just got us to that point of live in love as Christ loved us. And to get there in our passage, Paul does this thing where he tells us things that we need to put off, and then having put that off, what then we need to put on, and not just what do we need to put on, what's the inverse of that, but also here's this ludicrous goal that you have to try and reach. He says that you have to put off all falsehood and put on truth. But don't just be truthful, remember that we all belong to one another. And guess what? You can't be that kind of vulnerable community, that kind of truthful community, that kind of equally, mutually serving community if you're lying. So he says you got to put off falsehood, you have to put on truth. You have to put off stealing and put on working hard so that all the extra stuff you have you can give to those who need it. You can't give away things if you're busy stealing them. Now, we're not going to talk about Robin Hood right now. That's a whole different sermon, because maybe you can, but generally you cannot. Paul then says, put off evil talk and instead put on talk that is useful for building up. Not just useful for building up, but also so useful for building up that anybody who hears you goes, ooh, I feel better now. That's a big deal. Then he goes on a big list and says, put off wrath, anger, wrangling, slander, malice, put on kind, tender-hearted attitude, be forgiving, and then says, strive to do this to the same level as God. Well, that's not fair. And then that's when we get our passage. Live in love as Christ loved us. I've become really fond of a particular statement that I think this helps to illustrate. I've liked to say a couple times, and it's mattered in a couple conversations, that the Bible, I think, the whole of the Bible has a lot less to say about what not to do, and a lot more to say about what it is we are called toward. And then you're looking at me and saying, didn't Paul just list like 6 different things not to do, Ben? You're stupid. Yes, that's why I'm going to school, but also, The reason Paul is listing these, I think, is not don't do this thing and I'm not going to tell you why not. It's because we are called to a particular purpose and there's certain behaviors and attitudes that absolutely get in the way of that. There's certain behaviors and attitudes that sometimes get in the way of that, and there's certain behaviors and attitudes that always help us move into our goal. The point is not so much don't lie, don't steal. That's true. Don't do those things. But also, be generous. Be so vulnerable and so truthful that you belong to each other. Live in love as Christ loves you. This statement that the Bible has a lot less to say about what not to do and a lot more to say about what we are called to do came up during ASP. And it was a fun moment in our little sleeping room. We had Charlie, Finney, Jack, Will, Andrew, Carter, and me, and Nate, and my friend James. And as is normal, I walk into the bedroom and it's chaos. Whether it's a football going back and forth or a debate on baseball players, football players, who's better, LeBron or Jordan, always going back and forth. And so I walked in and I wasn't really listening that hard, if I'm honest, because it's always something. But then I start to hear a couple key phrases and I'm like, wait, they're talking about like my stuff. This isn't sports stuff. This is my stuff. They're talking about the Bible. And so now I'm listening and I'm hearing what's going on and I'm like, oh, they're talking about swearing. And I don't know if I interjected or if they asked. Either way, I gave my 2 cents. And the question was, does the Bible say it's sinful to swear? And the first question is, what do you mean by swear? And they say, well, we mean, the F word, or we mean, the S word, or these 4-letter words that are considered cussing in our language. And I said, well, if that's what you're considering swearing, no. The Bible doesn't say anything about it, because the Bible is written in Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic. So it has no conception of the F-bomb in the Bible. When it does say you should not swear, right, because those words are in the Bible, when it says that, the swearing that it means is more like, don't be saying, I swear to God that I did this, or I swear to God that I didn't do this. That's the type of swearing that the Bible is very specifically saying, don't do that because you're cheapening God's value. But it doesn't say quite as much about these 4-letter words. The Bible does say, put off bad talk, don't use evil language, but it doesn't specify exactly which words those are. And I think this is an important lesson in the Bible says a lot less about what not to do and a lot more about what we are called to do, because sometimes using a 4-letter word hurts the people in front of you. And when it does that, it is a sin. Sometimes it's just a word. That's okay. And honestly, I've been in situations where sometimes saying a good old F you somehow says I love you to a person. You can be skeptical all you want. But there are people in my life where using this language shows love and care, and I think the Bible has commanded me to use that language in some instances. Okay, now I'm putting my big shoe in my big foot. Let's move on. But Paul is telling us to put off things in order to put on other things. Live in love as Christ loves us. Actions and activities that we participate in while we're at ASP is one of the ways that we live into this call to live in love. Going to Cuba is one of these ways that we follow the call to live in love. Going to Margaret's Village is one of these ways that we live in love as Christ loved us. Bernie's Book Bank, Rise Against Hunger, having a diversity art gala is one of the ways that we live in love as Christ loves us. But specifically, With Appalachia Service Project, it's a week where we are learning skills that we get to use in the rest of our life. And I'm certainly talking about like the hard skills of learning how to use a circular saw, use a nail gun, whatever it is that you're using. Sure, that's fine. But more, we're learning skills that we didn't know before for the purpose of helping the people around us. We're learning how to paint, we're learning how to install trim, we're learning how to put in doors in order to make homes warmer, safer, and drier. We're learning how to enter into communities and see what's needed. And then realize, I don't know what to do to fix this, but I know now what I need to learn in order to be a part of the solution. And then we do it, right? We had a training day where we learn how to use circular saws, we learn how to nail, so that when we get there, we can actually help the community. We're working side by side with friends or strangers that are like us and different than us, and it teaches us to value voices other than our own in work and decision making. We're spending time with, and we're talking to, and we're listening to stories from the locals and the homeowners, and it's forming us into people who prioritize life and other humans over anything else. Going on a week-long trip like ASP is a crash course in following Paul's directive to live in love. But it can't just be a once a week, once a year thing. If that's all we're doing, we need to take another look, because living in love is a lifelong journey. It's a 24/7, 365, 100-year, however long you live journey, and we're never done with it. We need to be constantly asking, how can we live out the call of love today, tomorrow, and every tomorrow after it when we're interacting with friends, with family, with coworkers, whether we're in our classrooms or hallways or commute, or we're on the bus, or we're in our workplace, or we're on a Zoom meeting and it could have been an email. How are we living in love? And if the call is to live in love, and if ASP and other trips like it are training sessions, then my big question to everybody wearing a green shirt, and everybody else, is what are we taking from Appalachia Service Project that we can then apply to Western Springs or LaGrange or wherever it is that you live? Because ministry isn't just something that paid staff does, something that all of you get to do. What are the needs around us? Have we taken time to meditate on the needs around us? Because they are here, even when they're hard to find. Is there a skill that you need to learn to be a part of the solution to that need? Is there behavior or is there a discipline that we need to start that will show love? Or is there a behavior, activity, or discipline that we need to stop doing because it is not showing love? Because those are things that we need to walk away from. Because even though the focus is the call, that doesn't mean that we can just do everything and anything we want. It means that we have to take frequent and honest looks at our actions, our attitudes, and our behaviors to ask ourselves if everything we are doing serves the call to live in love. So wherever you find yourself today, wherever you find yourself tomorrow, the call that Paul has put on us is to discern and to live out our call to live in love as Christ loves us. And I cannot say how proud I am of these young people for starting the journey of that call. Amen.